So the federal election is now largely decided, and in the seat of Robertson, we've seen a 7.1% swing to the ALP with preferences and a 4.8% swing on the primary vote alone. And with that type of swing, we have a new sitting member in Robertson, Dr. Gordon Reid, and we're fortunate to have Dr. Reid with us today. Gordon, congratulations on the win.
Thank
you. You must be very excited.
Yeah, what I am is extremely humbled that the people of Robertson have put their trust in me and have given me their vote. And I just want to say I'll work for them night and day, both down in Canberra and here, to better the Central Coast. And I will take the time to thank Lucy Wicks for her service to the electorate and to the country, and thank her for a hard-fought campaign.
The Central Coast is in a good position of having two sitting members, including Emma McBride in the seat of DeBell, in what now looks like it's going to be a majority Labor government. So, first of all, what do you attribute the big swing to Labor and to some extent to the Greens as well, both nationally here and here on the coast?
Look, I think here in Robertson, in particular, we had significant swings to us because we had a community-led campaign. So what we set out to achieve at the start was to have a campaign run by members of the community and the Labor Party, but by members of the community, finding out their issues and then acting on their issues that they've told us. And that we set out to achieve that, and that's exactly what we achieved. It was a community-led grassroots campaign, and I think that's contributed quite significantly to our success here in Robertson. I think both Robertson and nationally, people wanted change. There was an appetite for change. You could sense it in the air on pre-poll. When we were out door knocking and phone banking, people wanted action on climate change. People wanted action on the economy. People wanted action on things like childcare and healthcare, and the Labor Party had policies that fit just that.
And to that point, we do have a housing crisis, we've got a healthcare crisis, and arguably we're now having a very significant inflationary event. It might be said that you're stepping out of one emergency department into another one. How are you going to deal with all of that?
Yeah, it's no secret that our government has inherited some substantial economic and financial issues from the previous government. And we know that there are challenges that lie ahead, but we do have plans for some of the issues that you just mentioned. You know, when we talk about housing, we talk about our Housing Australia Future Fund. We talk about our Regional First Home Buyer Support Scheme and our Shared Equity Scheme. When we talk about healthcare, we talk about strengthening Medicare through our urgent care centres, through locally at least, making the entire Central Coast an area of need to open up the available pool of doctors to come to the region. It's about making sure our GPs and our GP clinics are funded properly through our strengthening Medicare fund. It's our environmental policy through the Powering Australia plan. Labor has plans for multiple issues right across the electorate and right across the nation.
One of the things you talked about during the campaign was the Uluru Statement of the Heart. Can you just give us a bit of a picture on exactly what that involves? I understand it'll involve a referendum, and when all of that will happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So what the Labor Party has committed to is the Uluru Statement from the Heart in full, for voice, for treaty and for truth. And there's a few components to that. One of them is voice. And what that entails is a constitutionally enshrined voice to Parliament for First Nations people. There's also the component of a Makarrata Commission, which is basically two groups that have come together after a struggle, and that's all about treaty and truth. So what the Uluru Statement from the Heart is about reconciliation, and it's about acting. And that's what the Labor Party intends to do in this space. And it's important for me in particular, as a Wiradjuri man who's lived on Darkinjung land my whole life, and my grandmother, Auntie Gordon Reid, who's a local Aboriginal elder, and many First Nations people right across the Central Coast. It's one of the fastest growing areas for the Indigenous population here locally. There's over 15,000 roughly Indigenous people here in our region, and they need to be recognised, they need to be heard, and they need to be supported.
There's a lot in the news at the moment about rising electricity prices. You talked a lot about during your campaign around rewiring the national electricity grid and specifically around community batteries and community grids. What can we expect to see in the next 6 to 12 months here on the coast in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely. So what that was a part of was the Powering Australia plan, and to recap on some of the components of that, rewiring the electricity grid, as you said, and what that will do, it will improve electricity and energy transmission across the country, and that will assist in lowering electricity prices. There's also the investment in renewable energy infrastructure, wind, solar, hydro, etc. And then ancillary projects around that. So making electric vehicles cheaper and the installation of 400 community batteries, one of which will be here on the Central Coast. And as a government and as your local representative, I will endeavour and work night and day to achieve these in a timely fashion.
Gordon, if I can come back to something that's probably a little closer to your heart, the healthcare sector. A couple of the things that you referenced in the campaign, and indeed Emma McBride, was around the urgent care centres and also addressing the GP crisis here on the coast. What's in store for us in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll talk about the urgent care centres first. So the full title is the Medicare Urgent Care Clinics. And what they are is if you're too sick for the GP but not sick enough for the emergency department, that sort of middle category of patient. And we see large volumes of those types of patients presenting to our emergency departments. And one of the ways that we can help alleviate the strain off the emergency departments is through these urgent care clinics. So if you're too sick for the GP, not sick enough for the emergency department. Another aspect to that is that they will be a bulk billed clinic and they'll have extended operating hours at a separate site to the hospital. What this will allow is patients with those urgent but not emergent issues can go to that clinic, leaving the emergency departments for emergencies and leaving primary care and preventative health presentations for the general practitioners. So overall it makes it easier and cheaper to see a doctor. More locally, so we are receiving 2 of those urgent care clinics here on the Central Coast, one for the north and one for the south. Another issue is the supply of doctors as well, which we all know is quite a big issue here on the Central Coast. And what Federal Labor wants to do is make the entire Central Coast region what's called an area of need, or a DPA. It's the old workforce shortage areas. That will open up the available pool of doctors to come into our region. So these are just 2 examples of national policy that's being implemented locally here on the Central Coast.
Gordon, on election night, the seat of Robertson was constantly referred to as the #1 bellwether seat. And once again, we've seen it go to a candidate who will now form part of government. The Central Coast may want more than that. They may want a minister. Are there any vacancies in the cabinet for someone with your experience in the health sector?
Oh, look, what I've been elected to do is to represent the people of Robertson. And I will work tirelessly, I will work night and day representing the people of the Central Coast to make sure that they don't just have a voice here, but they've got a voice down in Parliament. Because the Central Coast is often a forgotten part of the world, it's a forgotten part of the state. And I'm just here to make sure that our voices locally are heard in our nation's capital.
And finally, what keeps you up most at night? What do you see as the biggest challenge in the next 12 months?
One of the biggest, and this I think extends past 12 months, is restoring the community's faith in public office, restoring the community's faith in their elected representatives. I think that can only be achieved under our government's plans for a federal independent anti-corruption commission, but also making sure that as a federal representative, as a local member, that I'm accessible to people. I want to make sure that people can come to me with their issues and that we can do our best to find practical solutions for them.
Gordon Reid, thanks for joining us and congratulations on the new job. And we wish you very well. Cheers.